Hey ghouls and gals, welcome back to my channel. My name is Taylor and this is the Summerween reading vlog. Happy Summerween. I am super excited to participate in this readathon. It's always the kickoff to spooky season this year. I actually started the Summerween readathon at the very tail end of my vacation, so you got to see some B-roll right at the beginning of this vlog. It really put me in the Summerween mood. I went to Colorado with my family for a family reunion and just saw so much beautiful nature, got a lot of hiking in, and had a really fun time, if not just a little bit of a slower start to Summerween. That's absolutely okay. This is day 3, by the way, when I'm not starting the readathon, but starting this vlog clip and this vlog, but it is day 3. I have finished one book, which is Heartwood by Amity, Gaige, and this one doesn't actually work for any of the Summerween reading prompts. I started it when we were traveling back home, wrapping up the vacation, and this is one that I did have on my Summerween TBR. I knew it took place in July, it took place in the woods, and it was going to be a very summery book. However, I started it, kept flying through this. I really enjoyed this one. Spoiler alert, I haven't even gotten into what this book is about yet, but I was really flying through this one, and then when I got home and looked at all the prompts, this doesn't actually fit any of those too well. This is, I would say, a literary mystery in the vein of The God of the Woods by Liz Moore, so it really doesn't fit for the read a horror or a thriller. I didn't read it at night. I mean, I kind of did a little bit, but I also read it a lot during the day. I read it physically, so not an audiobook, it's not a novella, it's not a graphic novel. We could argue that there's a stretch that there is a sky on the cover, because this cover has an outline of a woman. There are trees in the background, so obviously if there are trees, there's a skyline behind it, but you don't really see that. But this was a really summery read. It's about a woman who gets lost in the wilderness. She's a hiker. She's a pretty experienced hiker at this point, and she has been hiking the entire way up and down the Appalachian Trail, and in Maine, she goes missing. So we are primarily following 3 characters. We're following Valerie, who is the hiker that has gone missing. We are following Beverly, who is the warden in charge of the search and rescue efforts. And then we are also following Lena, who is a bird watcher. She lives in a retirement community, who may be a little bit more involved in the case than she would have imagined. She's kind of like an armchair sleuth detective, is really into bird watching in the wilderness, and all 3 of these women get entangled because of this search for Valerie. What's really interesting is Valerie is the main character in this book. The story surrounds her. You only get her point of view as she's writing letters to her mother. So as she is stuck in the wilderness, we as the reader are figuring out what happened to her as she's telling her mother what happened to her in these letters, that she hopes if she does not get found, her mother will be able to find them and read them one day. And this is definitely a book about, you know, trying to find this missing hiker, going up against the elements, but also mothers and daughters, because Valerie, with all of her correspondence to her mother, talking about the relationship there, and then also Lena and Beverly also talk about mothers and daughters and the relationship there. So this one's definitely more of a mystery, like a literary mystery, than a straightforward thriller, but I was just immersed in so much beautiful nature that this one was really calling my name. So I am glad that I kicked off the readathon with this book. I would recommend it for a summery read. I had a great time with it. I thought it was so beautiful just with the way that this story is constructed. It obviously goes over some pretty dark topics. It's a race against time to find Valerie, but just the way that this was put together was something that I really enjoyed. So I'll definitely be checking out more by this author. I did enjoy it. However, for my next book, I know I need to pick up a book that knocks off a couple of prompts. So we're gonna dive into what was on my TBR, the book that I think I am the most looking forward to, and that would be The Angel of Indian Lake by Stephen Graham Jones. This one works for the read a horror book. I'm also going to be kind of immersion reading it, so I have the physical. I'm also going to be listening to the audiobook as I get stuff done around the house today. This audiobook has multiple narrators, so the first one unfortunately in the series does not, and I would recommend reading that one physically because I felt like while the audiobook did a great job, the audiobook narrator was great, she just didn't really sound like Jade to me. But the second two books in this trilogy have lots of different narrators, and I really like that reading experience, and I'm really excited to finish up this trilogy. So that is the plans for today. Kicked off this readathon in a little bit of an unconventional way. I was traveling, I ended up reading a book that I did really enjoy this one. However, just wasn't the greatest fit for this prompts, but it definitely was a summary read. So readathon is going great so far, and super excited to dive into this Stephen Graham Jones and wrap up this trilogy. Happy day 4 of Summerween. I am now 20% of the way into The Angel of Indian Lake, and I am just loving this one so much. I did think to myself after I started this one, potentially not the best book to vlog for a readathon because it is the third book in a series, but this series follows Jade Daniels, who is obsessed with horror fiction, in particular 80s, 90s, 70s golden age of slasher movies, and she just wants to be in a slasher movie. That's like her hyperfixation. She relates everything in her world to a slasher. She has an encyclopedic knowledge of horror movies. However, when things start happening in her small town in the first book, My Heart is a Chainsaw, she starts to suspect that her town is going to become the scene of a slasher in real life. And so that's the premise of the first book. Second book obviously continues on from those events, a different slasher scenario, and then this third and final book is yet another slasher scenario for Jade and a handful of characters that we followed from book 1. And what I love about this one is that this series, first of all, if you're a horror movie fan, this is like metafiction. There's so many references that are like explicitly referenced, and not only by Jade but by an omniscient narrator in some cases, but also just if you love horror movies, you're gonna find a ton of references in these books. But what I love about this series is that it almost feels like a movie series rather than a book series, just because the three of them just feel like very intentionally they have a little bit of a different tone. So if you think of something like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, it's not the same directors doing those movies every single time. So if you watch them all back to back to back, there's obviously going to be similarities between them, sometimes the same characters or final girls as well, but there's just a little something very different about each installation in franchises like that. And this book series really captures that, which I think is so cool. So the first book is third person limited, so we are following just Jade, but it's third person. The second one, we are following a whole bunch of different people in the town. It is not just Jade, it is still in third person, but we are head hopping quite a lot. And then for this book, we are following Jade again, but in the first person. So just those little different changes have really just made this feel like a horror franchise and not just a series, which I really do enjoy. And I'm really liking this one. I will say also, this does take place in October, so I probably should have saved it for like actual Halloween time. For anyone else's reference, My Heart is a Chainsaw, perfect summer movie. Lots of references to abandoned campsites and Don't Go in the Water and Jaws and all of that. So perfect summer horror. The second book, Don't Fear the Reaper, is so wintry. It takes place during a once-in-a-century snowstorm. This one is taking place during the Halloween season. So probably should have waited for this one because I am very much a seasonal reader and this is a very seasonal readathon, but I'm so invested. I started it. I didn't really care about any of those things, honestly, because I'm just having such a fun time with this book. I am primarily doing an immersion read with this one where I'll read it physically and listen to the audiobook at the same time. Stephen Graham Jones has a very distinctive writing style and an authorial voice, and I just feel like sometimes it's easier to follow along with if you have that immersion read. So I am really loving this one and I'll continue to read it throughout today. This one's about 400-ish pages, so 20% of the way through. It is a chunkier one, but I'm really eating it up. So who knows, maybe we'll finish it today. I don't think so, but never say never. So for this evening, I think I'll probably read this throughout the day and then maybe pick up another book in the evening because I do have that prompt, read a book in the dark, left to complete. So I think I could do two birds with the one stone for that one and pick a book that I am exclusively reading at night. And then also I have two that have skies on the cover. So I think I'm gonna double up those prompts. So I don't know exactly which one. I'll probably read the first chapter of both of these and see which one I'm getting along better with, but I have Wilderness Reform by Matt and Harrison Query. This one is a summer camp horror, so this is an option, and then the other option is Under the Surface by Diana Urban, and this one is about the Paris catacombs, and I think this one in particular could be so fun to read at night in the dark with limited lighting because the Paris catacombs have very limited lighting. It's very dark down there. It's one of the reasons why I was looking for a book that took place in the Paris catacombs, because As Above, So Below is such a creepy found footage horror movie to me, and just the thought of not even just the Paris catacombs, but just being trapped, being lost underground is so scary. So I have a feeling that I'll probably pick this one up just because that immersion read, not with the audiobook, but just reading this book in the dark, I think I'll try and like grab a flashlight or something like that and really immerse myself in the ambiance of just being somewhere in the complete dark and being lost. I think that could be really fun. So those are the reading plans for today. Me and my partner might go see 28 Years Later today. I don't really know. I'm not really feeling, if we're being completely honest, not really feeling like going to see a movie in the middle of the week. Usually we just see them on weekends, but we are a little nervous it's going to leave the theater this weekend, so we might catch that tonight, we might not. So that'll cut into the reading time. I am really excited to see it. We were on vacation when it came out, so we still need to see it. We still want to see it, but I don't know if I'm feeling watching like a 2-hour long movie in the middle of the week, so we might see that as well. So tomorrow you might get some book reviews or maybe just some book updates. You also might get a movie review as well, so we will have to see. I'm gonna go get back to reading. I will check back in tomorrow with a reading update. I am on my lunch break, so we're gonna try and keep this short and sweet. We ended up not going to 28 Years Later yesterday. We just thought that would be a lot for the middle of the work week, and it is on this weekend, so we will be catching that this weekend. As for bookish updates, I am now 50% of the way through The Angel of Indian Lake, and I'm loving it. I'm continuing to love it. This just feels, knock on wood obviously, but just such a strong thematic conclusion to this series. So having so much fun with it, and I'm loving the immersion read here. And then last night I ended up picking up Under the Surface by Diana Urban. I read the first couple of chapters of this one in a completely dark room with just my phone as a flashlight, and it's fine so far. I'm on page 45 and we've just now gotten the characters are going into the Paris catacombs. So, you know, even though I didn't love the first couple of chapters of this, I think I am going to like it as the horror starts ramping up. We are following a group of high schoolers. They're on their senior trip to Paris and exploring the sights, having a great time, when one of them gets an invitation to party at a party with Parisians. But it's not just any party, it's a party in the catacombs. So a group of them end up going together to this party, and I believe one of them gets lost and the other ones have to follow them out. So haven't gotten to any of the horror, which is where I'm like not having the best time with this so far. It just feels very melodramatic. It's YA, the characters are young, they're acting young, and obviously that's like very true to life for a bunch of high schoolers getting a first little taste of freedom and maybe not making the best possible decisions. It also feels a little bit melodramatic, a little bit romance forward, which I'm not loving, but I'm not gonna DNF this until I give it a good go and actually try out some of the catacombs horror in here. So far this just feels like a very stereotypical YA. It almost feels like a contemporary romance if I would have like picked this up and read this not seeing the cover or the synopsis, because it's just been at this point about our main character and the kind of friendship struggles she's having with her friends and frenemies and one of her guy friends who could be her boyfriend. Will they, won't they? It's a lot of that at the beginning of this book, but it is YA, so the chapters are very short, the pace is very speedy. So 45 pages in, we're diving into the catacombs. I have a feeling tonight's reading is going to get a little bit more creepy. So that is the reading update for today. Definitely going to be finishing up Angel of Indian Lake and then getting further into my nighttime read, and I will check back in with y'all tomorrow. Hey friends, little reading update, little Summerween haul. I have not finished The Angel of Indian Lake yet. I was planning on it yesterday, but behind the scenes, I did also have to wrap up my July ARCs reading vlog, so I did have to finish up The Library at Hellebore by Cassandra Khaw for that video, and that did take some reading time out of yesterday, but I did finish it, really enjoyed it. To make sure to check out that vlog. It should be the vlog before this one if you want to hear my full in-depth thoughts. So that definitely was a horror book, so I was still reading horror for Summerween, just had to take a break from what I was thinking that I would read yesterday, but I am really loving this one, about 70% of the way through now, and I've shed a tear. I have shed a tear. This book is just getting me, and I shouldn't be shocked by that, because the first two books also, like, they had the scares, they had the fun slasher vibes, but they also had a lot of heart to them as well and a lot of emotional beats. So I shouldn't have been surprised that the third and final book would really just punch me in the gut a couple of times along the way, but this is just going really well. I'm taking my time with it. I'm having a great time with it. That immersion read has just been so nice, putting on like an ambiance on YouTube. I have a whole playlist actually of Summerween reading ambiances. A lot of them are very outdoorsy, camping sort of horror ambiances that pair perfectly with this book. So I will be finishing it up today. I know I sound like a broken record because I said that I would finish it yesterday, but I did have another book kind of get in the way of my reading plans, but I should be able to read this one. And I just have a feeling that the last 100 pages or so are going to be very devastating. But that's the plans for today. Finish this book up, and then I don't know what the next book in Summerween will be. I obviously still have my book that I am reading in the dark, Under the Surface. I didn't read any of that yesterday because once I finished with the Cassandra Khaw, I moved straight on to the Stephen Graham Jones until it was time for bed. So when I finish that one up, if I still have daylight left, like if it's the evening, then I'll just dive into Under the the surface. If it's not, I do have a couple of options from the TBR that I could read. First of all, Heads Will Roll by Josh Winning. This is definitely a contender. It's definitely a book I wanted to read during Summerween this year because, I mean, look at this cover. Super, super Summerweeny. It is about a camp in the middle of the woods. Slasher things start happening. But then the other one that I could potentially read is Wake Up and Open Your Eyes by Clay McLeod Chapman. And this is due back at the library pretty soon. So if I want to read it, then I do have to read it like during the space of time for this readathon. I've been hearing so many great things about this one, and even though in this readathon I've kind of been playing fast and loose with a couple of the prompt challenges, this one could work for the prompt read a book that you've owned for a year or more. I talked about in my TBR that I don't really have anything for that. I have some books that I've owned for more than a year, but they're really not conducive to a readathon. Like some of the bigger vintage Stephen Kings, like The Regulators and Desperation, that just would not work for a readathon because they're like 600, 700 pages. And then I also have like Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, and then some other ones that are not horror. So I don't have any that I physically own that could be a part of that. But this was originally a short story. Wake Up and Open Your Eyes. I mean, it was originally a short story called The Spew of the News in the collection Found, an anthology of found footage horror stories. And that has been on my TBR for a really long time now. So I could kind of squeeze this one in to that prompt just because I haven't owned it for more than a year. But this general concept has been on my TBR for more than a year. So this could be an option as well. So those are the reading plans. Let's just do a little bit, moving on to a little bit of a candle Summerween haul. I've noticed this year in particular, a lot of stores are jumping on the Summerween bandwagon. So even stores like the one I'm going to talk about, Bath & Body Works, have traditionally released their Halloween line in the summer in years past. They haven't really marketed it as a Summerween collection, but this year they and a couple of other stores have been posting a lot about Summerween, which is pretty exciting. I have really mixed feelings on that because I think part of what I do like about Summerween is that it's just a celebration of like spooky season and getting ready for fall, and it doesn't necessarily have like all of that consumerism and urge to buy because it's not in stores yet. It's just for people who are so passionate about horror or Halloween that are just starting to get the ball rolling a little bit early. That's like a whole video discussion conversation on its own. But this year a lot of stores have marketed things as Summerween. So yeah, I did get some candles. I wasn't anticipating getting some candles, but I had a lot of rewards points stacked up because I rarely shop at Bath & Body anymore. Pretty much just during the fall I have a couple of candle scents that are my go-tos that I stock up on. I'll get one and then that'll last me throughout the entire year. So first candle that I got was a freebie with those reward points, so how can I say no to a free candle? That one's Pumpkin S'mores. The scent notes on this one are roasted marshmallow, melted chocolate, and pumpkin graham cracker. This is actually a perfect candle for Summerween, I think, because what is more summery than s'mores, and then you add those pumpkin notes in, it just makes it very summery. Perfect for Summerween. I'm definitely going to light this one during this readathon. And then next up, moving on to the 3 wicks, we have Cider Lane, which is a personal favorite of mine. The fragrance notes on this one are warm caramel, Granny Smith apple, dark brown sugar, and ground clove. I did order these online, not in store, because this one is one of my very favorite scents that Bath & Body Works has ever done for the fall, but the past couple of years it's been online only, and I prefer usually to go in the store, especially for scent-based products, so you can smell the scents, pick them out in store. So I was holding off hope the past couple of years that this one would be in stores, and it's just been online only. That is why, except for that freebie single wick back there, the 2 3 wicks that I got are scents that I have used and loved before because I was not taking a chance on an online order for a scent that I may or may not like. But I love Cider Lane. It's the quintessential caramel apple smell and I absolutely love it. And then last but not least, had to get one of their Halloween candles for the packaging, but also for the smell for this one, and that would be Pumpkin Carving. carving. The scents for this one are freshly carved pumpkin, spiced pumpkin seeds, and smooth brown sugar. I liked the Halloween packaging on this one. It's very hit or miss some years, but I thought this was a really good blend of kind of like the neon poppy Halloween that I tend to like. I do like pumpkin carving. I don't like this one as much as scents like leaves or pumpkin apple. Those are like my top two that I absolutely love, but this one is perfect. It's like a slightly like more palatable sweet cinnamon pumpkin. I like that one in theory, but when you're burning it in a house, that one is one that's like very, very overwhelming. This one is that same cinnamony pumpkin, but not as overpowering. And just like some background context, because you might be like, wow, this girl like knows a lot about candles or has a lot of very specific knowledge about Bath & Body Works candles. I did used to work at a Bath & Body Works for a number of years, so I am pretty familiar with at least their traditional scents. They usually have a core group of scents every single year, and it was part of my job back then to not only upsell and get people to buy our candles, but also to kind of memorize the notes and also know specific notes that specific people were looking for. So this is one that I actually, like before I worked there, probably wouldn't have bought. Same with leaves, actually. I was much more of a just sweet scents only person, but working there made me really fall in love with like just these atmospheric, super in-your-face fall scents. So this plus the Halloween packaging, I'm gonna be saving this one for October, but like I mentioned before, the pumpkin s'mores one is definitely getting burnt for the end to wrap out this Summerween readathon, because we are in the last stretch of this readathon, which I am getting ahead of myself. It is not over yet, and as we approach the end of the readathon, it is the weekend, so I do have a lot of plans. Me and my partner are going to make some sugar cookies and use some Halloween cutouts and make a sweet snack for the end of Summerween, and then also probably maybe pop in a movie. I think last year we ended up watching quite a few of the Friday the 13th, so maybe something like that, maybe something like sleepaway camp, and of course get to reading some more great spooky books. So I'm going to go actually get back to work and then get back to reading, and then I will check back in tomorrow with another reading update. So I did finish The Angel of Indian Lake by Stephen Graham Jones, and I absolutely loved this one. This one is such a perfect conclusion to the trilogy, a perfect conclusion of Jade Daniels' story, and I just really, really loved it. This is a series that for me, each book increased, like my level of enjoyment for each book increased as the series went on. There was no second book slump for me, just the story from the very beginning of the first book to this last book just has really taken on such a life of its own, and Jade and Letha and Prufrock and so many other characters and locations. This is just such a standout series for me, and I'm so glad that I completed this series, because I do have a bad habit of just putting off conclusions to series that I like. I never want them to end, so I am glad that I wrapped up this series this year, and I love it. Definitely going to be probably in my top 10 of books this year. So second book of the readathon down. It was an absolute success. I am also glad that I took a little bit longer with this one, really took my time, did the immersion read, and just slowly took it all in instead of trying to read it as fast as I possibly could, and I really think that added to my reading experience for this conclusion to the series. So done with my second book, and now let's talk about the book that I have been reading at night. And we are moving from one final girl with a gemstone named Jade to another probably final girl with the name of Ruby in Under the Surface by Diana Urban, and 40% of the way through this one so far. This has been the one that I've been reading at night in the dark, and I'm enjoying it a lot more than my my last update. This did get a lot better for me once they actually were lost in the Paris catacombs. The creep factor has been upped significantly, so I am enjoying the kind of journey that our main character Ruby and her friends are going through as they're trying to make their way out of this seemingly very impossible maze. I will say 40% of the way in, this is dual POV, so we have Ruby's POV, and every so often we get the point of view of Sean, who is her best friend but who's also a love interest. They've kind of been skirting around, will they, won't they take their friendship to something more. He did not go with Ruby and some of her other classmates to this catacomb situation, so he has no idea where she is. He doesn't get as many POV chapters as Ruby does, thankfully for me, because when we're following Ruby and then the other people that are trapped, that are lost in the catacombs, we're also following Sean as he's trying to figure out what happened to Ruby, where she went, where she's gone, is she missing, is she safe, what is happening, and that's just not as compelling of a through line as the missing in the catacombs story, because that's very suspenseful. It's a very scary, very terrifying situation. And then we have Sean, who is a high schooler and is trying to get involved in this missing persons investigation. There's not so much he can do. It's pretty much his POV chapters are really just mooning over his lost friend Ruby and just talking about how much he loves her and how much he wishes they could have had their first kiss before she went wherever she went. That is just not as compelling for me, because as the reader, we know where Ruby is, we know what she's going through, and it just doesn't really feel, it feels like he's kind of taking the momentum away from her story. So that's my update on this. One more thing about this one that I think is kind of funny, but it's okay because my expectations for this one have been adjusted. But Ruby is in the catacombs with her new best friend, her old best friend, who's now like a frenemy, and then another girl who they're all kind of tangentially close with. And the dynamics of these girls that are lost, like they are in one of the most horrific situations I could personally imagine, because these catacombs are extensive. You get lost, you're probably not coming out. So they have that terror, but then they'll also have these continuous conversations about just interpersonal relationships and who's hooking up with who and who crossed whose back, and like the weight and the importance of those situations feel the same. Like just as much time is being dedicated to these girls kind of fighting and talking about relationships and friendships in the middle of these catacombs, and that feels just as high stakes as the very real danger that they are in. So that's a little bit strange as well. Overall, I just wish for this one there'd be a little less romance and a lot more trying to escape the catacombs, because this is personally for me one of the most horrific situations that I could personally imagine myself in. So 40% of the way through. I do have quite a bit to go tonight, because tonight is actually the last night of the readathon. Tomorrow is the last full day of the readathon. So if this is going to be my book that I am reading in the dark, reading at night, then I do have to finish it tonight. So we'll just have to see. I think I could maybe do it if I stayed up a little bit more than my typical. This is YA, so now that the main action has started, the chapters are really like breezing by. It's a very fast-paced read, so we'll see. This is my nighttime read, and then of course we're probably a little bit too ambitious here, but I think for tomorrow I'm going to pick up Heads Will Roll, because I just feel like this is a summer camp slasher and I need one of those. I know I mentioned other books throughout this vlog that were contenders. I have a good feeling about this one. I have a good feeling. I got the audiobook from the library, so I can switch back and forth physical and audio throughout the day. So I think we're going to hopefully finish Under the Surface tonight and then dive into this one for it to be the last book of this readathon. So I am going to go get to reading. I'll check back in tomorrow, probably a couple of times, to give a reading update and then to wrap up the vlog. Happy last day of Summerween, friends. Last night I got 70% of the way through this one, went to bed pretty late, woke up early this morning and finished it up, and overall it was definitely a fun time. Like I mentioned in my other updates, a little bit too romance forward and like interpersonal relationship drama that I felt like should take a back seat to the actually getting lost in the Paris catacombs. But the parts that were scary were really scary. When Ruby and her friends were in peril, there were a lot of situations that had me holding my breath as I was reading it with them. I just, thought that the character of Sean, the point of view, I should say, of Sean wasn't needed, took away from the peril that Ruby was in. So overall, it was a fun time. Pretty good for a readathon to read in the dark. That definitely added an extra layer. So if you are a fan of YA and you want a book about a group of teens whose vacation just goes horribly wrong, I would recommend this one. The setting was super cool, and I think that's a big part of why even when I was having reservations at the beginning, I kept going on with it because the setting was so unique. I will say I have seen in a couple of reviews from people who do speak French that the French is not the best in here, and some of the French characters, the way that they use slang and use different phrases are not actually like what a French or a Parisian person would use. I don't know anything about that. I just thought I would shout that out in case, you are picking it up and reading it and have that familiarity. You might not like that, but this book has set me off on a quest to find more books like this. Not even necessarily the Paris catacombs, but underground cave horror, I think would be really effective for me. So now we are moving on to the last book of this vlog. I did start this one. I've only gotten about 2-3 chapters into this one. What's crazy is that this references Jade Daniels, who of course was the final girl in The Angel of Indian Lake. So I just think that's pretty funny. We had Jade Daniels, and then we had a book where the main character also was named Ruby, so another gemstone name, and then this book mentions Jade Daniels, which is pretty cool. So this one feels very fast-paced. I have the audio, I have the physical. It's time to get to reading to finish up one last book before the end of the readathon. Okay friends, it is technically the end of Summerween. I did not finish Heads Will Roll by Josh Winning. I got about 100 pages into this one and I am really enjoying it. So we're gonna do something a little unconventional. We're just going to add another day on to Summerween and just keep the fun, spooky summer vibes going because I'm having a lot of fun with this book and I don't want to end this vlog not giving a full review on it. So that is what we're going to do today, at the risk of probably making this vlog a little bit too long. I just want to finish this book up. It's absolutely so much fun, a perfect summer read so far. We are following main character Willow, but that is not her real name. That is the alias she is going by because Willow has been canceled. She is a TV star and she tweeted something very problematic. At this point, we don't know what it was, but she's canceled. She needs to turn over a new leaf, and it's a lot of pressure. She's getting fired from jobs, people are refusing to talk to her, even her fiance has called off their engagement. So her agent suggests a getaway, a 2-week stay at this camp where you go completely unplugged and unconnected and just really dive into nature. You don't have your phone, you don't have access to the outside world, and Willow thinks that this is absolutely perfect. The camp was created for people like her, people who desperately need to to get away from it all and kind of reinvent themselves. Everyone at this camp, when you arrive, you put your phone, all of your electronics away, you lock them away, and then you choose an alias for yourself. So Willow actually chooses her own name, and she's getting acquainted to a very ragtag group of people who are all at this camp for very different reasons, and Willow thinks this could be a great first start. Nature is beautiful, the campers are really nice, and she's learning that she really likes being unplugged. However, when the other campers start to go missing one by one, there also starts to be a series of very cryptic warnings. Willow and everyone at the camp might be in grave danger. So I'm really enjoying this one. I also enjoyed Josh Winning's Burn the Negative. I thought that was really fun as well. What I like about this one is even though it is primarily told traditionally, we have little excerpts between every couple of chapters or so where we will dive a little bit into the epistolary. So we'll have text conversations, podcast transcripts, and this one is like a newspaper article, a magazine article that give further insight into Willow and some other characters. And I just think that's a really fun and interactive way to build a world, especially in a fun camp horror such as this one. So I am having a really good time. The summer setting is perfect. The camp setting's very idyllic, and this one also feels very self-aware of itself. There have been references to a number of other things. Willow is a fan of Jade Daniels. She's also reading the latest Paul Tremblay as her book on this getaway, so it's very self-referential. It also talks about like Willow and some of the other campers joke about Friday the 13th before bad things start happening. So I really kind of like that sort of undercurrent of meta-ness almost. So while Summerween is technically over, I'm just going to finish this book up today, and then we will actually get around to wrapping up this vlog. So I finished Heads Will Roll, and I really enjoyed this one. This was definitely a great book to read for Summerween. So if you are watching this during this summer, this definitely is a perfect summer horror. It kind of gave like Scream 3 vibes. I don't know why my brain is saying Scream 3 as opposed to other movies in that franchise. I think just probably because our main character and a number of other characters are actors and other celebrities. So having that kind of Hollywood, but this doesn't take place in Hollywood, but just kind of that like meta movie magic thing going on. I really had a fun time with this one, and I'm glad I got to finish it up and give a review. This was very fun. It was very silly and self-aware at times, had a lot of references just like Angel of Indian Lake, but it also had some chilling moments as well. I loved the summer camp setting and the isolation of the camp. I just think it was utilized not only as like a fun nostalgic setting, but just a genuinely creepy setting that was well utilized, and I had a lot of fun with this one. So with that being said, it is the end, finally the end of this vlog, the end of the Summerween readathon. I read 3 and some change books during this readathon. Gonna go over them just really quickly, rapid fire. My least favorite would have to be Under the Surface by Diana Urban. This one, there was a sky on the cover. I read it at night in the dark, and while I did enjoy the setup of this one and the location, it just was a little too melodramatic for me in terms of the characters and the character relationships, and just some of the POV changes were not my favorite, and I felt like really took away from the creep factor of this story. But if you do like YA horror, if you don't mind it being really like romance centric, at times taking away from the horror, in my opinion of course, but YA horror with a super unique setting, this could be a good recommendation for you. And then next up we have Heartwood by Amity Gaige, and I did really like this one. These 3, the jump from Under the Surface to this one is a pretty significant one. I really enjoyed this, the exploration. It is also a good summer book. It was a little more literary than what I was originally planning on for this Summerween readathon and what I was in the mood for. But if you're looking for a literary mystery, if you like The God of the Woods by Liz Moore, and you're looking for another story that explores a missing person in the wilderness, but also explores mother and daughter relationships, I think you would really like this one. And then next up, we have Heads Will Roll by Josh Winning. This has cemented this author as an author that I'm going to pretty much pick up and read whatever he puts out, because Burn the Negative I really loved. I really loved this one as well. A fun summer camp slasher that has some creepy moments and some fun moments, really balances that campiness with the horror very effectively for me. And then of course my favorite book that I read for this readathon, and one of my favorite books of the year, The Angel of Indian Lake by Stephen Graham Jones. This one I'm going to just go ahead and fit it in for that prompt of a book that you've owned for a year. This has been on my TBR for a year, so we're gonna count it as that. This is a horror as well, and I did read it with the audiobook, so I think I covered all of my bases in terms of prompts, even though it felt a little bit like a chaotic process. But I really loved this one. This was such a great conclusion to a series. I've talked about this book the most throughout this vlog, so I'll keep it short. But if you are a slasher movie fan, I think you would really love this series, so make sure to go check it out. My Heart is a Chainsaw is the first book in this trilogy. But that is going to be it for this readathon. It was another great year of the Summerween readathon. Thank you so much, Gabby, for hosting, and thank you all for watching this video. Make sure to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below. Let me know if you participated in Summerween, if you have any vlogs, any content. I'd love to check them out and get some more summery horror and thriller recommendations. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any videos from me. Stay safe, stay spooky, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!